Ethan and Emily have known each other long enough to understand each other's moods without words. They live in the same city, work in different fields, and meet often because being around each other feels natural. Over time, a quiet rhythm formed between them friendly dinners. Long talks and inside jokes, but both were too afraid to cross the line into something more. Their friendship felt safe, and neither wanted to risk losing it. Still, underneath every smile and every shared moment, there is unspoken longing. They both feel it, but neither has admitted it. On a rainy Friday night, after a long week, Ethan and Emily decide to grab dinner together. The weather outside is cold and messy, but the small cafe they sit in is warm. They talk about work stress, annoying coworkers, and small victories from the week. Emily laughs at Ethan's jokes, and Ethan steals small glances at her when she isn't paying attention. The night feels easy, almost too easy. Their conversations feel like a habit, something both depend on more than they realize. When they finally leave the cafe, the rain is heavier. Ethan walks her to her apartment, holding his jacket over her head, even though it only covers her a little. Emily smiles at the gesture, knowing he always does small things like that without thinking. They stop under the dim light of her building entrance, and she sighs with a tiredness that goes beyond the weather. It is the kind of sigh a person gives when life has pressed them down slowly, piece by piece. She tells him about her rising rent, how the landlord keeps increasing it every few months. She jokes lightly about how expensive the city has become, but her voice has a crack in it. Ethan notices. He always notices. She tries to sound casual, but he can tell she is worried. She explains that she might not be able to stay there much longer if things get worse. The admission surprises him. Emily rarely shows this kind of vulnerability, trying to cheer her up. He blurts out a joke. "Well, if it gets too hard, you could always move in with me." He says it lightly, with a half smile, expecting her to roll her eyes or tease him back. Instead, she pauses. For a moment, she just looks at him with searching eyes, as if trying to understand whether he means it. The streetlight above them flickers, and the rain softens for a second, making the moment strangely quiet. Then she smiles, but it's different, not her usual bright one. This one is soft, almost fragile. "That would be nice," she says in a low voice. The words catch him off guard. He feels a strange pressure in his chest, something between hope and confusion. He expected a joke in return, not a sincere answer. He wonders if she is serious, or if she is simply exhausted from everything happening in her life. Before he can say anything else, she waves him goodnight and steps inside. The door closes gently behind her, leaving Ethan standing alone under the rain. He takes a slow breath, trying to understand what just happened. The idea of her living with him did not scare him, it excited him. But he also does not want to misunderstand her feelings or take advantage of her situation. He walks home quickly, the rain soaking through his clothes. But his thoughts are louder than the weather. He replays the night again and again. Her smile, her tone, her silence after his joke. Something about it felt real, heavier than a casual moment. He starts to wonder if she has been hiding her feelings the same way he has been hiding his. He questions whether the joke came from a place of truth inside him, maybe. He wanted her closer all along. When he reaches his apartment, he sits for a long time in the dark living room. His heartbeat feels unsteady, not from the walk, but from the possibility of what Emily's words might have meant. He tries to convince himself it was nothing, just a tired comment. But deep inside, he knows it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like a door had opened, even if neither of them had stepped through it yet. The next morning, when Ethan wakes up earlier than usual, his mind is still filled with last night's moment, the rain, Emily's tired smile, and the quiet way she said, "That would be nice." He tries to shake it off, telling himself not to think too much. But the truth is, he can't stop thinking about it. He moves around his apartment, makes coffee, and opens the windows to let fresh air in. But the uneasy excitement in his chest stays just as he sits down with his mug. There's a sudden knock at his front door. The sound is sharp, unexpected, almost urgent. He sets his coffee aside and walks to the door with a strange feeling rising inside him. When he opens it, his breath catches. Emily is standing there, not dressed casually for a visit, not smiling, not even carrying her usual small purse. Instead, she has a travel bag slung over her shoulder, her hair tied back in a messy bun, and her eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. She looks like someone who made a big decision in a very short amount of time. "Is your offer still good?" she asks quietly. Ethan freezes. His mind struggles to process the scene, even though it's happening right in front of him. Emily shifts on her feet as if afraid he'll say no. She tries to explain herself quickly, her words tumbling out in one long breath. She tells him she got an official notice early that morning. Her rent is going up again worse than she expected. She can't afford it anymore. She doesn't have time to look for a new place. She doesn't want to impose on friends who already have full homes. And then she says the words that make Ethan's chest tighten. "When I remembered what you said last night, it felt like the only safe thought I had." Her voice trembles, not dramatically, just enough to show she's been holding in her emotions for hours. She isn't crying, but she looks tired in a deeper way than the night before. Life has pushed her fast, and she's just trying to catch her breath. Ethan steps back instantly, opening the door wider. "Emily, of course. Come in." His answer is simple, but his heart is racing. He can tell she isn't here casually. This isn't a small decision. She trusts him enough to walk into his home with all her worries. He feels honored, scared, hopeful, too many things at once. Emily steps inside slowly, like she's unsure if she's doing the right thing. She looks around nervously, as if expecting his home to push her out. Ethan gently takes her bag from her shoulder, and she lets him, her hands dropping to her sides in relief. He places the bag on the couch and turns back to her, trying to give her a calm smile. "You don't have to explain anything," he says softly. "You're not alone. You can stay here as long as you need." Emily nods, but he can see she's overwhelmed. She sits on the edge of the couch and takes a deep breath, as if finally letting her walls down. She admits how scared she was when she saw the rent notice, how her hands shook as she tried to figure out her options. She tells him she didn't want to ask anyone for help except him. Something about his presence made her feel safe enough to try. Ethan listens quietly, not interrupting. He wants her to talk. He wants her to feel protected. He wants to tell her that he meant the offer from the moment he said it, even if it came out as a joke. But he doesn't confess that. He doesn't want to make her uncomfortable or pressure her when she's already carrying so much. When she finishes talking, the tension in the room shifts. It becomes softer, warmer, like something invisible between them has changed shape. Emily finally smiles. Not a joyful smile, but a grateful one. "I don't want to be a problem for you," she whispers. "You're not," Ethan replies firmly. "You never could be." For a moment, they simply sit there, the quiet filling the space around them. Emily's shoulders relax. Ethan feels something inside him settle too, like this moment was meant to happen. Even if it arrived sooner and faster than either of them expected. Emily settles into Ethan's apartment. The first few days are surprisingly smooth. They move around each other with the ease of old friends. Mornings start with coffee and quick breakfast conversations. Evenings are spent cooking together. Their movements synced almost naturally. Emily places her things neatly in the spare room, her presence adding warmth and life to a space that had felt quiet and empty before. Ethan notices how her laughter fills the apartment, softening the edges of his usually controlled, orderly world. They share small routines that grow into comfort. Ethan realizes how much he has missed having someone around. Watching Emily make tea, laughing at her small mistakes, teasing her when she burns toast, he feels a quiet happiness he hadn't known he needed. Emily, in turn, begins to feel secure here. For the first time in weeks, she doesn't have to worry about finding a new place, paying more rent, or handling everything alone. She begins to relax in ways she hadn't allowed herself before, letting down the walls she's built over months of stress. But comfort begins to carry its own tension. Living under the same roof reveals details neither had noticed before. Ethan sees Emily in vulnerable moments staring out the window, lost in thought, sometimes speaking to herself softly when she doesn't think anyone is listening. One night, he finds her in the kitchen late, quietly sipping water, and asks if she's okay. She pauses, hesitant, then admits she's been feeling anxious about everything: her work, her finances, and even the pace of life. Her honesty strikes him. She trusts him enough to share her worries, and he realizes that trust is deeper than he expected. They continue their routines, but moments like these remind Ethan that living together isn't just about shared chores. It's about emotions, about the unspoken. He notices how she sometimes leans closer when she's focused on something, how her presence lingers in the apartment even after she's gone from the room. Every glance, every small gesture begins to feel meaningful. Ethan catches himself smiling more than usual, thinking about her, feeling something he's been avoiding for a long time: love. One evening, while they are folding laundry together, the tension reaches a new level. Emily picks up one of Ethan's shirts by accident and holds it against her chest. For a moment, neither notices the other watching. Then Ethan looks up and their eyes meet. Emily quickly looks away, her cheeks pink. She whispers, almost too softly for him to hear, I like your scent." The admission is simple but loaded with meaning. Ethan feels his heart skip. He wants to respond, to tell her he feels the same way, that he's been drawn to her for years, but he stops himself. He knows this moment is delicate. He doesn't want to scare her or make her feel pressured. From that day, their relationship begins to shift in subtle ways. Small touches linger longer. Smiles carry a new warmth. The apartment, once a safe and neutral space, becomes a place of emotional closeness, of shared moments that neither can ignore. Ethan feels joy in seeing Emily relax in his space, in hearing her laugh freely, in noticing the small things she does that make life brighter. Emily, too, starts to notice him differently. The way he speaks, the little gestures he makes, and the silent care he shows start to matter more than ever. Yet, despite the comfort and growing closeness, both feel a quiet tension. Neither wants to cross the line too quickly to risk the fragile balance they've found. Ethan wonders if Emily feels the same pull he does, while Emily wonders if her feelings are real or just a response to being safe and cared for. Both are caught in the delicate dance of attraction and friendship, a slow burn that neither fully controls. As the days pass, their connection deepens, but so does the unspoken question between them. Will they admit their feelings, or will this closeness remain in the realm of friendship? The apartment, once a simple home, becomes a witness to the invisible bond growing between them, filled with shared laughter, quiet vulnerability, and small gestures of care that speak louder than words. Part 3 ends with the sense that something is about to happen. Both Ethan and Emily feel it, though neither says it aloud. Living together has changed everything. The tension is no longer just emotionalized, tangible. And as they continue to share their lives in these small, everyday moments, the next step in their relationship feels inevitable. Something is building, and the story leaves the audience waiting, wondering who will make the first move when emotions finally become too strong to ignore. The tension between Ethan and Emily reaching its quiet peak. Living together has brought them closer, but the truth of their feelings has remained unspoken. Both feel its small glances, lingering touches, subtle changes in voice, but neither has admitted what's in their hearts. Their days are filled with laughter, shared meals, and gentle teasing. But beneath the surface, a question hangs in the air. Will they ever speak openly about what they feel? One night, a sudden storm hits the city. The rain pours heavily, rattling windows, and the occasional flash of lightning illuminates the apartment in stark white. Emily, startled by the storm, finds herself unable to stay in her room. She walks slowly down the hall and knocks lightly on Ethan's bedroom door. Her voice is quiet, almost hesitant. "Can I sit here a while? The storm's too loud." Ethan's heart beats faster. He nods without a word and gestures for her to come in. She sits at the edge of his bed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The room is small, intimate, filled with the warm light of a single lamp. Outside, the storm roars, but inside, the tension between them is even stronger. For a long time, neither speaks. The rain and thunder fill the silence, but the air is charged with emotion. Finally, Emily breaks the quiet. Her voice trembles slightly as she asks Ethan, "Why did you really offer your place to me that night?" Even as a joke. Her eyes search his face, looking for honesty. Ethan takes a slow breath, knowing this is the moment he has been waiting for, but also fearing that the words might change everything between them. "I offered because I wanted you near me," he admits softly. His eyes lock on hers. "I've wanted that for a long time." His voice is steady, but inside, his heart is pounding. He sees the surprise in her eyes, the quiet hope that he has finally spoken the truth. Emily shifts slightly, her fingers brushing against the edge of the blanket as if grounding herself. She whispers, "Then why didn't you say anything sooner?" Her words carry a mix of sadness and longing. She had been waiting unknowingly for him to speak, and the hesitation has created its own tension over time. Ethan shakes his head slightly. "Because I didn't want to make things harder for you. You were stressed, and I didn't want to add more." His honesty is raw, unfiltered. He is no longer hiding his feelings. For a moment, the room is silent again, but it is different this time. It feels softer, warmer, as if the storm outside has mirrored the storm of emotions finally released indoors. Emily's eyes glisten with unshed tears, not of sadness, but of relief and hope. She inches closer to him, her voice barely audible. "Ethan, what if I moved in because I wanted to be near you too?" Ethan feels a rush of warmth, a mixture of relief, joy, and longing. He reaches out, taking her hand gently. The touch is soft, tentative, but it carries the weight of unspoken promises. Emily squeezes his hand in return, and in that simple gesture, years of friendship, laughter, and hidden emotions are acknowledged. They don't speak for a few seconds. It's just holding hands and letting the connection settle outside. The storm continues, but inside, there is a calm that neither expected. Ethan and Emily sit closer now, feeling the bond that has been building over months finally taking shape in something tangible. There is no rush, no sudden leap, just the quiet acknowledgement that they belong near each other, that their feelings are mutual, and that this moment is theirs alone. The night stretches on, but neither wants to break the silence too soon. They talk in soft whispers, sharing small thoughts and memories, realizing how much they enjoy each other's company beyond friendship. Each laugh, each glance, each brush of hands strengthens the emotional intimacy that has grown naturally. The apartment, once a neutral space, now feels like a home filled with warmth, trust, and love. Part 4 ends on a quiet, emotional high. Ethan and Emily are no longer just roommates or friends. They are two hearts, acknowledging their feelings, slowly stepping into a romantic connection that feels safe, gentle, and real. The storm outside fades, but the spark inside the room remains, hinting at the love that has quietly grown over time and is now ready to flourish. The story leaves the audience with a sense of hope and anticipation, wondering how their relationship will grow as they take the next steps together. It was one of those cold Chicago evenings when the wind made the city lights blur in the rain. Emily Walker sat alone by the window of a small cafe, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of coffee. She was 31, single, and tired from a week that had drained both her body and her spirit. She had been looking forward to a dinner with friends, but one by one they had texted to cancel traffic, weather, excuses. Now she was left with the quiet hum of the cafe, the smell of roasted beans, her own thoughts. She wasn't sad exactly, just hollow. Life had turned into a routine that repeated every week. Work, coffee, emails, sleep, the same faces, the same conversations, the same tired smiles she put on every morning. She sometimes wondered if this was how adulthood was meant to feel, comfortable but lonely. Outside, the rain poured harder, washing the streets clean and leaving them shining like silver ribbons under the streetlights. People hurried past, heads down, umbrellas open. Emily watched them without really seeing. She loved the rain, even when it made everything cold and gray. It reminded her that the world kept moving, even when she stood still. She was lost in thought when the cafe door opened. The small brass bell above it jingled, letting in a gust of wind and a man shaking rain off his jacket. He looked about her age, tall with dark hair, slightly messy from the weather, and eyes that carried something gentle but tired, like someone who had seen too much yet still smiled anyway. He glanced around, searching for a seat. Every table was full except the one across from Emily. For a second, their eyes met. It wasn't long, just a heartbeat, but something about that look felt strange, like recognition without memory. He gave a polite, warm smile and walked toward her. "Excuse me," he said, voice calm but clear over the soft music. "Do you mind if I sit here? Everywhere else seems taken." Emily hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Sure, go ahead." He sat across from her, setting down his camera bag beside the chair. He looked grateful, and when he smiled again, it reached his eyes. "Thank you. I didn't expect the rain to come down this hard tonight." "Yeah," Emily said, glancing out the window. "It feels like the city's trying to wash itself clean." "Huh." He laughed softly. "That's one way to put it." For a while, they didn't talk much. She went back to her coffee, pretending to read messages on her phone, but she kept catching herself sneaking glances at him. He was focused on drying his camera with a small cloth, careful and patient. There was something about the way he handled it, like it wasn't just equipment, but something meaningful. Finally, curiosity got the better of her. "Are you a photographer?" He looked up and nodded. "Yeah, sort of. I work for a travel magazine. Just moved here last month, actually." "Still getting used to the city?" Emily smiled. "That explains the camera. Chicago's a tough city to get used to, especially in winter." "Tell me about it," he said with a grin. "I keep losing feeling in my fingers. But it's worth it. There's something real about this place, something honest." His words surprised her. Most newcomers only complained about traffic or weather. "You sound like you actually like it here," she said. He shrugged. "I like places that have stories hidden in them. You just have to look closely." Emily looked at him again, studying his face. He wasn't like the men she usually met, loud, distracted, always in a rush. This man spoke as if every word mattered. There was calm in him, a kind of quiet confidence she hadn't felt around anyone in a long time. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the glass like thousands of soft fingers. The sound filled the pauses between their sentences. But it wasn't awkward. It felt easy. Natural. Eventually, Emily asked, "So, what made you move here?" He leaned back, thinking for a second. "Honestly, a change. My life was starting to feel like a loop. Same places, same faces, same thing. I thought maybe if I changed my surroundings, something inside me might change too." Emily's eyes softened. "That sounds familiar." He gave her a curious look. "You too." She smiled sadly. "Maybe I think I stopped expecting anything new to happen. So I just started living quietly." He nodded slowly, as if he understood perfectly. "Funny how that happens. You blink, and suddenly years have passed." Their conversation stayed light but meaningful. They talked about favorite books, about how city nights had their own kind of music, about childhood dreams they never quite chased. Each topic unfolded naturally, like a story they were both writing together. Time slipped away. She hadn't noticed how dark it had gotten until the barista announced closing time. Emily looked around, surprised to see the cafe almost empty. The rain outside had turned to a gentle drizzle, and the air through the door smelled fresh and cold. She gathered her things, feeling a strange sense of disappointment. "I guess they're kicking us out." "Yeah," he said, standing up with her. "But it's been nice. Not often I meet someone who actually enjoys small talk that turns into real talk." She smiled at that. Most people just scroll through their phones. They both laughed softly. For a moment, neither moved toward the door. The air between them carried something quiet but undeniably spark that didn't feel forced. As they stepped outside, the world felt softer. The streetlights glowed against wet pavement, and the faint sound of traffic hummed in the distance. Emily pulled her coat tighter while he stood there, hands in pockets, looking at her as if trying to remember her face. "Well," she said, smiling awkwardly, "thanks for the company. You made a rainy night a little less lonely." He smiled, gentle and genuine. "Glad I could help." I'm Daniel, by the way. Emily, nice to meet you, Emily. He hesitated, looking up at the dark clouds. Maybe this doesn't have to be the end of tonight. His voice wasn't forward, was soft, almost careful. Like he didn't want to break whatever fragile thing was forming between them. Emily felt her heart skip. Normally, she would have said no. She didn't like surprises or late-night adventures. But something about Daniel felt safe, familiar. Okay, she said finally. One more coffee. He smiled, and that smile carried warmth that cut through the cold air. One more coffee? As they walked down the quiet street together, Emily glanced up at the glowing windows, the rain-slicked sidewalks, and the city she thought she knew so well. Yet tonight, everything looked different, alive, unpredictable. She didn't know it yet. But that single decision to share another cup of coffee with a stranger was the beginning of the night that would change her life forever. And as the cafe lights faded behind them, something new began quietly, beautifully, without either of them realizing just how much that one simple moment would mean. The second cafe they found was a small one, tucked away on a quiet corner street. The storm had calmed to a light drizzle, and the glow from the windows made the place look warm and inviting. Emily followed Daniel inside, still unsure why she'd agreed to this. She wasn't someone who usually spent her evenings with strangers. But something about him felt different, gentle, real. They sat near the back, away from the few late-night customers. The waitress handed them steaming mugs of coffee, and Daniel smiled as he wrapped his hands around his cup. "I can't believe you actually said yes," he said with a small grin. Emily laughed softly. "Honestly, I can't believe it either. Maybe it's the rain. It makes everything feel less serious." He nodded. Rain does that. Slows the world down. Their conversation started small again, but it didn't stay that way for long. The words came easily, flowing between them like they had known each other for years. Daniel told her about his work. How photography wasn't just a job for him, but a way to hold on to moments that disappeared too quickly. He showed her a few photos on his camera, street lights reflecting on puddles, children playing near fountains, old couples holding hands on park benches. Emily looked at the pictures carefully. "You make ordinary things look alive." Daniel smiled, a little shy. "That's the goal. I guess I just like finding beauty in things people overlook." She nodded, understanding more than she expected to. "I think that's why I like stories. They remind people that life is full of small moments that matter." That caught his attention. "You're right. Not professionally," she said. "But I always wanted to. I used to write little things in college, short stories, diary entries. Then life happened, and I stopped." "Maybe you should start again," he said softly. "The world always needs more storytellers." His words landed deeper than he probably meant them to. Emily hadn't realized how much she'd missed that creative part of herself until he mentioned it. For a moment, she just looked at him, wondering why a stranger could see her so clearly when people she'd known for years never did. The cafe played soft jazz in the background, and the sound filled the pauses between their laughter. Outside, the rain glistened under the streetlight. Time moved differently. They're slower, softer, as if the world had decided to give them this one night away from everything else. At one point, Daniel leaned back, watching her quietly. "It's strange," he said. "I usually hate small talk, but this doesn't feel like that. Feels familiar." Emily felt her chest tighten, not from nerves, but from recognition. "Yeah," she said, "like we've had this conversation before, just in another life." He smiled at that. "Then I'm glad we found each other again." They both laughed, but the moment carried a quiet meaning that neither of them could deny. Something was forming between them, something fragile, unexpected, and real. Daniel began sharing small pieces of his life. He told her about growing up in Oregon, how his father used to take him hiking and teach him how to notice details, the color of light through trees, the way shadows moved at sunset. He told her about losing his father 2 years ago and how photography became his way of remembering him. Emily listened without interrupting. His honesty touched her because it wasn't polished or dramatic, it was simple and true. When he paused, she said quietly, he'd be proud. You're still seeing the world the way he taught you to. Daniel looked down at his coffee, smiling sadly. I hope so. Then he asked about her life. She told him about her job at a publishing firm, about long days spent behind screens, editing other people's words instead of writing her own. She spoke about her parents who lived far away, about how she called them every Sunday, even when there wasn't much to say. She talked about how her world had grown smaller without her noticing. He didn't try to fix her words or offer advice. He just listened, really listened, and that made all the difference. When their coffee was finished, they ordered tea just to keep talking. The clock on the wall ticked past 11, then midnight. The waitress started cleaning tables, but they hardly noticed. Every new topic opened another door. They talked about favorite cities, dreams they hadn't chased, fears they pretended didn't exist. Daniel told her about a photo he once took of an old man sitting alone at a train station. It wasn't a sad picture, he explained. It was peaceful. Like he wasn't waiting for anyone else, just enjoying being there. I think I want to be like that someday. Content even if I'm alone. Emily smiled. I used to think happiness meant finding someone. Now I think it's more about finding peace. Maybe both, Daniel said softly. If you're lucky. That made her blush slightly, and she looked away, pretending to stir her drink. But he noticed the air between them shifted again, light but charged, like the first spark before a flame. By the time they finally stood up to leave, the cafe was nearly empty. The city outside had gone quiet. They stepped out into the cool air, their footsteps echoing faintly on the wet pavement. The storm was over, and the streets glowed with reflections of traffic lights and neon signs. Daniel looked up at the sky. You know, he said, I almost didn't go into that first cafe tonight. I was going to head straight home. Emily smiled. And I almost didn't stay. I was about to leave when you walked in. Guess the rain had other plans, he said. Maybe, she replied. Maybe it was trying to tell us something. They walked side by side toward her apartment building. It wasn't far, but neither of them seemed in a hurry to reach it. Every few steps, their shoulders brushed, and each time, Emily felt something she hadn't felt in a long time live, awake, curious about tomorrow. When they reached her building, she stopped at the steps. The light above the door flickered softly, and the sound of water dripping from the rooftops filled the silence. I should probably get inside, she said. Yeah, he replied. It's late. But neither of them moved. Thank you, Daniel said finally, for tonight. For the company. Emily smiled. No, thank you. For reminding me what it feels like to actually talk to someone. He looked at her for a moment, eyes steady and kind. Maybe this isn't just a one-time thing. Her heart skipped again. You think? He shrugged, smiling softly. I don't know. Some things just feel right. Emily didn't know how to answer, so she simply nodded. He stepped back slowly, hands in his pockets, and began walking away. But just before turning the corner, he looked back one last time and said, Good night. Emily, she watched him disappear into the quiet street. Her heart full of something new, a warmth that didn't come from coffee or conversation, but from the feeling that something in her life had quietly shifted. That night, as she stood there under the soft drizzle, Emily realized she wasn't lonely anymore. Something inside her had changed, even if she couldn't name it yet. It was supposed to be just one more coffee, but deep down, she already knew this was only the beginning of a story neither of them would ever forget. The following evening, Emily couldn't focus on anything. At work, her screen blurred as she kept replaying Daniel's words, his quiet smile, and the way he had said goodnight like it actually meant something. She didn't know what this was or what it could become, but she hadn't felt this kind of excitement in years. That night had left a mark on her, one she couldn't easily explain later. When she got home, she saw his message, Hey, I hope you made it through another stormy day. Coffee again tomorrow. Just one simple line, yet her heart fluttered. She typed back, Same place. Unless you have a better idea, he replied. The next evening, they met again. The sky was clear this time, painted with pink and gold as the sun set over the city. It felt different, not like strangers meeting, but like two people continuing a conversation that hadn't finished. They ordered their drinks and sat by the window. Daniel had his camera with him again, and when Emily teased him about it, he grinned. Habit. I can't go anywhere without it. You never know when you'll find a story worth capturing. She tilted her head. Do you think people are stories too? He looked thoughtful. The best ones. Their laughter came easily again, but beneath it, something deeper began to stir. They weren't just talking, they were connecting. Emily told him things she rarely shared, about how she once planned to travel but never did, how fear and routine kept her grounded. Daniel listened with the same patient attention that made her feel safe to be honest. He told her about a relationship that ended years ago, not bitterly. Just a chapter that closed before it should have. Sometimes, he said, you meet the right person at the wrong time. Emily nodded quietly. And sometimes you meet the wrong person at the right time. Their eyes met. Neither spoke after that for a moment. The silence wasn't heavy, it was meaningful, as if both were thinking the same thing but didn't want to say it too soon. When they left the cafe, the night air was cool and calm. They walked aimlessly, letting the city guide them. The streets glowed with soft yellow light, the hum of passing cars blending with the quiet rhythm of their footsteps. Daniel suddenly stopped and pointed at an old bookstore with its lights still on. Ever been in there? She shook her head. Then let's go. Inside, the smell of paper and dust filled the air. Rows of forgotten stories surrounded them, and Emily felt strangely at home. Daniel wandered off and returned a few minutes later, holding a small book of poems. Read this one, he said. Handing it to her, the poem was simple but beautiful, about two strangers meeting under a city light. Realizing that some connections were written long before they happened, when she looked up, Daniel was already watching her. Fitting, right? He said softly. Emily closed the book slowly. A little too fitting. They didn't buy anything, but that bookstore visit became another quiet memory that would stay with both of them. They kept meeting after that, sometimes for coffee, sometimes for long walks by the lake. With each meeting, the walls Emily had built over the years started to fade. She found herself laughing more, speaking freely, feeling seen. Daniel had that rare kind of energy that didn't demand attention but held it naturally. He noticed small things, the way she stirred her coffee twice before drinking, how her voice softened when she spoke about her childhood dog, the way her eyes lit up when talking about books. One evening, as they sat by the lake watching the city lights reflect on the water, Daniel said, "You know what I realized? You never really know when a moment is going to matter. It's only later that you see how big it was." Emily smiled, her eyes on the dark water. Like that night at the cafe, he nodded. Exactly like that. The wind brushed against them, cool and gentle. They sat in silence, both aware of how natural everything felt. As if their lives had been quietly leading to this point, Daniel turned to her, his voice softer now. "Can I tell you something? I didn't plan to stay in Chicago for long. It was supposed to be a few months. But now, I'm not so sure why." She asked, her heart already knowing the answer. He looked at her and said, "Because of you." The words weren't loud or dramatic, but they hit her deeply. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she let herself feel the warmth in them, the truth behind his tone. "Daniel," she whispered, unsure how to respond. He smiled gently. "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know." They didn't kiss or hold hands. They didn't need to. The connection between them was already stronger than either expected. It wasn't built on attraction alone. It was built on understanding, timing, and the comfort of being seen after a long time of feeling invisible as the night went on. They shared stories that were usually kept hidden. Daniel spoke about his fears of failure, of losing people he cared about. Emily shared how she'd once been engaged years ago, but ended it because she realized she wasn't in love, just afraid of being alone. He didn't judge. He just listened. The stars above the city shimmered faintly through the haze, and the world felt softer around them. Every minute seemed suspended in quiet meaning. When it got late, Daniel offered to walk her home again. On the way, they passed the same streetlight where they'd stood the first night. Emily stopped and looked up at it, remembering how nervous she'd been then, how unsure she was about saying yes. Daniel noticed and smiled. Full circle. "Maybe it's a sign," she said playfully. "Of what?" "That some things are meant to return to where they began." He chuckled softly. "Then I guess we're exactly where we should be." They stood there, facing each other, and for the first time in years, Emily felt peace, not the quiet, lonely kind she had grown used to, but the kind that came from connection, from the gentle awareness that her life had shifted in a way that couldn't be undone. That night, when she got home, she sat by the window watching the lights of Chicago blink below her apartment. Her phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. "I don't know what this is yet, but I'm glad it's happening." She smiled and replied, "Me too." In that moment, she didn't think about the future or what it might hold. She just felt grateful for the unexpected, for the rain that brought him into that cafe, for the courage to say yes, and for the quiet warmth that filled her heart now. Because somewhere between 2 coffees, late-night walks, and shared silences, Emily had found something rare, a connection that didn't need promises or explanations. Something real, something gentle. And deep down, she knew that this was only the beginning of a story she would remember for the rest of her life. The story of the night that changed everything. When Emily woke up the next morning, sunlight poured into her apartment. The city outside buzzed with its usual rhythm, cars, voices, footsteps, but inside, everything felt different. There was a lightness in her chest, the kind that comes after a long time of feeling heavy. She made coffee, sat by her window, and replayed every moment from the night before the walk by the lake. Daniel's words, the calm way he looked at her like he already understood her heart. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Daniel. "Good morning. I'm not sure if you're a morning person, but I thought I'd take the risk." She smiled. "You guessed wrong, but I'll forgive you. Then let me make it up to you. Dinner tonight." That's how it started. Slowly, gently, and without any of the chaos that usually comes with new love. Their story grew in the quiet hours, morning coffees, late-night talks, small adventures across the city. They explored art galleries, visited old bookstores, took long walks through parks filled with autumn leaves. Daniel would bring his camera everywhere, capturing small details, her hand reaching for a book, her reflection in a shop window, the way her hair moved in the wind. Emily teased him for it. "You'll run out of memory space if you keep taking pictures of me." He smiled. "Then I'll just buy another camera." Their connection deepened naturally. There were no grand confessions, just steady warmth that kept building. He told her about the places he wanted to photograph: the northern lights, the deserts of Utah, the mountains of Alaska. She told him about her dream of writing again. How she wanted to start a small blog where she could share stories that meant something. He encouraged her every step of the way. One evening, after they had been seeing each other for a few months, Daniel brought her to a rooftop overlooking the city. It was quiet up there, just the sound of wind and faraway traffic. He handed her his camera. "Take a picture," he said. "Of what?" "Of this." "Of us?" She laughed. "I'm not a photographer." "You don't have to be," he said. "Just capture how this feels." She did. The photo came out slightly blurry, but it didn't matter. It held the truth of that night, the city lights, their hands almost touching, the soft smile that said everything words couldn't. But life, as always, has its turns. A few months later, Daniel received an offer from a magazine in New York, a big opportunity, the kind that could shape his career. When he told her, Emily tried to smile, though her heart sank a little. "That's amazing," she said. "You have to take it." He looked at her uncertain. "I don't want to lose this." "You won't," she said softly, even though she wasn't sure if that was true. "Some things are strong enough to survive distance." He reached for her hand. "Then promise me we'll try. I promise." The next few weeks passed quickly. They spent every spare moment together, late-night walks, breakfast dates, slow Sunday mornings. When the day came for him to leave, Emily went with him to the train station. Neither of them spoke much. The sound of trains echoed through the air, and she tried to memorize everything about that moment, the weight of his hand, the look in his eyes, the feeling that something beautiful was ending and beginning at the same time. When the train doors closed, she stood there for a long time, watching it disappear into the distance. She didn't cry right away. She just stood still, letting the silence sink in. Only later, when she got home, did she finally let the tears fall, not from sadness, but from gratitude. Because no matter what happened next, she knew she had lived something real. Months passed. They called, they texted, they shared pictures and stories. Life got busier, time zones clashed, but they always found ways to reach each other. Emily started writing again, just like she'd promised herself. Her stories often began with lines like, "It was raining the night, everything changed." And every time she wrote those words, she thought of Daniel. One night, almost a year later, she received a message. "I'm coming back to Chicago for a project. Are you free next weekend?" Her heart raced. Always. When she saw him again, it felt like no time had passed. He was still Daniel's same kind eyes, same quiet smile. They met at their favorite cafe, the one where it all started. Everything looked the same, except for the feeling that they'd both grown a little stronger, wiser over dinner that night. He pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. Inside was a printed photo, the blurry one she had taken on the rooftop. Below it, he had written in neat handwriting, "Some things don't fade." Emily looked up, eyes shimmering. "You kept it." "I framed it," he said softly. "It reminds me why I started taking pictures in the first place." From that night on, they never really drifted again. Daniel's work kept him traveling, but Chicago always remained his home. And Emily's stories grew first on her blog, then in small publications. Readers wrote to her, saying her stories felt real, alive, comforting. She never told them that the man behind her inspiration was the same one who had walked into a cafe on a rainy night years ago. Years later, on their anniversary, they returned to that same cafe. The city outside was quieter, and the window seat where they had first met was empty, waiting for them. They sat down, ordered the same drinks, and smiled at how everything had come full circle. Daniel reached across the table and said, "Do you ever think about that night?" "Every time it rains," Emily replied. He chuckled. "You know what's funny? I almost didn't go inside that cafe. I was about to keep walking home. But something, call it instinct or fate, told me to stop." Emily's eyes softened. "Then I guess the universe had other plans." He looked at her the same way he did that first night, steady, warm. "Sure. The best plans, apparently." They finished their coffee, walked outside, and stood under the same streetlight where everything had begun. The rain started to fall lightly, as if the world was reminding them of how it all started. Emily tilted her head toward him and smiled. "Seems like the rain still likes us." Daniel laughed quietly. "Or maybe it's jealous." She laughed too, leaning into him. They stayed there for a while, watching the city glow under the drizzle. The years between that first night and now played through her mind, the laughter, the distance, the heartbreak, and all the moments that stitched them back together. As they walked home hand in hand, Emily thought about how strange life could be. How a canceled dinner, a quiet cafe, and a stranger with a camera could turn into the greatest story of her life. And every time the city lights reflected on wet streets, she remembered that night, the one that had changed everything. The night that taught her love doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it just walks in on a rainy evening, asks if it can share a table, and never really leaves. That night had rewritten her life in the simplest way possible, not through promises or dramatic words, but through connection. A kind, patient, steady kind of love. And though many nights had come and gone since then, Emily still whispered to herself whenever it rained, "That was the night that changed my life forever."